Throughout my time on this channel, I have been pushing myself further and further on an eternal quest to find and conquer the hardest FNAF challenges. From the original max modes in the first FNAF games, to fan games, to mods of games that look like this.
5 coins!
I've tried time and time again to one-up myself and complete even harder challenges. And today, I've done it again. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Bones5 YouTube channel on YouTube. A few months ago, I made a video where I beat a challenge known as Hopeless Greed, which is essentially a super buffed version of Ultimate Custom Night's 50/20 mode with an additional self-imposed challenge added on. At the time of completion, this was the hardest verified FNAF challenge that had ever been done. But on that video, there were a few comments that suggested that I try something that is arguably even harder. Something simply called Max Mode from a completely original fan game called One Night at Frogger's. An unverified challenge that hasn't been completed yet in the true hardest original FNAF fan game. And looking at the gameplay, it honestly didn't seem that hard compared to Hopeless Greed. At least, it wasn't nearly as chaotic. So the fact that it was being hyped up so much caught my attention, and I really wanted to know if this challenge was truly harder than Hopeless Greed. So I set out on a quest to complete what may be my hardest challenge yet, Max Mode. Now, similar to most FNAF challenges at this caliber, you don't just jump right into Max Mode. Max Mode has an easier version known as Min Mode. So in order to structure this video, I'll first explain how the game and each of the characters work within Min Mode, so it's a bit easier to digest. Then we can move on to Max Mode and discuss how all of the characters have been changed in order to make the game significantly harder. In One Night at Frogger's, you're placed in an office with a TV, cameras, and 2 doors that you can turn to. Everything in this game is controlled solely with your mouse, so unlike Hopeless Pursuit, we won't be having any crazy keyboard torture in this game. For universal mechanics, it's actually pretty simple. The entire night revolves mainly around one mechanic, the song. You'll see on the Frog TV there's a black bar at the bottom where you can play the song, kinda like how the tape player works in Final Fantasy Candies 3. Though unlike the tape player, which you have to play in order to stay alive, the song is instead used as functionally a progress bar. When the song finishes, the night ends. The only catch here is that the song will pause whenever you open the cameras, so you'll have to click to replay it whenever you exit the cameras in order to continue progressing through the night. For this reason, there really isn't a definite night length for Min Mode and Max Mode, as we only know the lengths of the songs. But generally, Min Mode lasts about 5 minutes and 40 seconds, and Max Mode lasts around 7 minutes and 50 seconds. Also, unlike Hopeless Pursuit, there are only 7 characters total, though these characters are far more threatening on their own compared to an average character in UCN. We can generally split these guys up into 2 groups, camera characters and door characters. Let's start with our camera characters. Throughout Min Mode and Max Mode, you're going to have to enter the cameras in order to stop the Yi-Boy from entering your office. Throughout the night, Yi-Boy will gradually move throughout the building towards your office. To defend against him, you'll notice 5 buttons on the left side of the cameras. These are your buses. Each of these buttons will send a bus to a specific location in the building at the time specified next to the bus. For example, bus 5 will send a bus here exactly 30 seconds from when you click the check mark to send the bus. Though it is extremely difficult to find and hit Yi-Boy. As you may have already noticed, there is no way to select cameras within the monitor. They're actually on autoplay, switching every few seconds to different locations around the building. The only thing that we can interact with are the buses. Our saving grace is that in both Min Mode and Max Mode, Yi-Boy will always follow a set path, no matter what. So as long as we know exactly when to send which buses, we should be okay. More on that later.
That was in. Bullshit. That was in, bro. Oh my god, bruh.
The only other character that's directly in the cameras is Maximum 56. The entire objective with Yi-Boy was to hit him with the buses, but Maximum is the complete opposite. As you can tell by his design, Maximum is a walking bomb, and hitting him with a bus will cause him to explode. leaving you unable to use the cameras and giving you no means to defend against Yi-Boy. Pulling up the cameras will cause Maximum to move, so you'll have to time your flips such that Maximum is out of the way of the buses that you're sending to hit Yi-Boy. When you drop the cameras, you'll be met with our last two camera characters, Frogger25 and Code Hacker. Frogger will simply say touch me or leave me alone, and you will have to either touch him or leave him alone before turning to either of the doors or pulling up the cameras. Otherwise, you'll die. Code Hacker, or Code for short, is a bit more complicated. Whenever he spawns, he'll have an HP value displayed above his window. You'll have to scan the 5 frogs that line the office and see which one has the same HP value as him, then hit him with that frog. If you fail to hit him with a frog before you turn, you die.
Leave me alone.
Depending on where Frogger and the correct HP value frog for Code spawns, you can already see how these two can combo with each other in order to create some pretty annoying situations. Especially with this little shit, oh my god. But they wouldn't be that threatening if you had time to process them, and that time is taken away by our door characters. Our last three characters occupy the left and right hallways that you can turn to: Aiden Moore, Matt Warkowski, and Toilet Frog. Aiden is a buff green frog that will slowly approach from either the left or right hallway. If you look at him, he stops moving, but if you close the door or aren't looking at him, he'll inch forward. When his timer reaches 0, make sure the door is closed or else he gets in your office and you die. Once he's cleared, he'll spawn in the opposite hall to repeat the cycle. While Aiden is a slow-moving threat throughout the hallways, Matt Warkowski is the complete opposite. Taking the appearance of Costume from Chuck E. Cheese Rebooted, Matt Warkowski functions as a reflex and aim test. See? Told you I wasn't lying in those teasers. Y'all thought it was Chuck E. Cheese. That's some mighty fine bait right there. When he's poised to attack in a hallway, he'll lunge at you when you turn to the hallway, and you'll have to flick your mouse to the door button in order to close it on him. If you fail to close it before he reaches you, you die. Our last character is the one that you'll spend the most time dealing with throughout the entire night: Toilet Frog. That's a toilet. I can't make the physics joke. I promised I wouldn't make a physics joke. I'm a man of the people. I won't make a physics joke. No more physics. No more physics. On every second time you turn, Toilet will spawn. He'll teleport your cursor to the start of a path that he outlines across your screen, and you'll have to make your way through that path before he reaches you in order to turn back. If he ends up reaching you before you complete the path, or you touch outside the path, you lose. Toilet's paths are always the exact same every single run, starting with a squiggly path, then an upside down U shape, a path where you have to ride on a spinning pineapple and Vinny from Candies 3 in order to make it to the other side, a path where you have to juke this geometry dash icon, and the heart path. Combining all of these characters into one challenge seems pretty confusing, especially with how the door characters spawn, but thankfully both min mode and max mode are almost completely scripted in terms of how they're played. In Hopeless Pursuit, our saving grace was that there was a rough cycle that we could follow that would hit every point of interest that we needed to check in order to stay alive. And we have a similar one here. In fact, the cycle is so integral to the gameplay of min mode and max mode that to this day, as of writing this script, I've never even played the main game of One Night at Frogger's and instead just jumped straight to the max mode and learning the cycle. So let's go over how exactly one cycle in min mode and max mode works. But before we get into that, I'm gonna give a quick reminder: if you're enjoying the video so far, please consider subscribing. It helps more than anything. But of course, only do so if you're enjoying the video so far. Okay, I won't lie to you guys, the cycle for min mode and max mode is super complicated to learn. But once you have it down, it's really easy to follow. I'm gonna try and break it down as much as I can, because if you can understand one cycle, you can understand the entire night. The cycle is all centered around Yi-Boy. As you'll come to see throughout this video, Yi-Boy is without question the hardest character in min mode and especially max mode. Essentially, we're going to have to find specific points where we know Yi-Boy is vulnerable and can be hit with a bus, then deal with everyone else in between the times that we're sending buses. Thankfully, min mode is built completely around this cycle and has the buses highlighted whenever you should send them in order to hit Yi-Boy. As you can see, the windows that you have to send buses are extremely small. Even though Yi-Boy is like kind of fat, Yi-Boy is very good at dodging. In fact, the widest possible timing to hit Yi-Boy is 0.4 seconds, with most of the timings being 0.2 second windows. I don't know about you guys, but that speed is scaling above like everything ever. When the night first starts, you'll have to send bus 4 anywhere from 2.0 to 2.3 seconds, but this is only needed at the very start of the night. Once this bus hits Yeeboy, we're going to repeat the same pattern for buses throughout the night. Each full cycle of buses lasts exactly 35 seconds. And within those 35 seconds, we have 3 barrages or groupings of buses with 2 buses each. In the first barrage, we send bus 2 and 3, in the second barrage we send bus 5 and 4, and in the last barrage we send buses 4 and 3. If sent correctly, you'll be able to keep Yeeboy at bay. However, it's not that simple when everyone else is active. We see this as early as the first barrage, when we have to send buses 2 and 3. Because of the nature of the cycles, we don't have to remember exactly when to send each bus. We just have to remember the last digit and the decimal place for the interval. So we pull up the cameras and send bus 2 from 2.4 to 2.6. On the other 2 barrages, we would stay in the cameras and wait to send the second bus before dropping them. But the 2-3 barrage is special in that we send the buses while we camera flip. Remember earlier how I was talking about maximum 56, this bomb guy? We don't want to hit him with any buses, and we're guaranteed to miss him so long as we always flip twice on every barrage. On the second and third barrage, we just do an extra flip after we send both buses. But here, it's better to do it within the barrage. That way we can get a little extra time played on the song during this barrage. You'll notice as we drop the cameras that we now have to deal with Frogger's Touch Me or Leave Me Alone. In min mode, Frogger will be a bit smaller or larger depending on whether you should touch him or leave him alone to make him a little easier. But it's still important to get used to reacting to the sound cue instead of relying on his visual size.
Touch me. Touch me.
Once you send the first barrage, we turn to the right and close the door on the 7-second interval. This is the first Matt Warkowski spawn, but we don't have to react to him quite yet. We're just setting up him and Aiden Moore to be on the same side of the office for later in the cycle. Now we turn back to the center and to the right again in order to get Toilet. Within the cycle, it's very important to understand exactly where you are in the cycle when you're doing Toilet's paths. By himself, Toilet is easily one of the hardest characters in the game, but you also have to keep track of exactly how much time you spend within the path in order to stall Aiden Moore. Bear with me here because this is going to get a little complicated, but I promise it'll make sense once we talk about a complete cycle. You see, Aiden Moore is stalled whenever you're looking at his hallway, as we've already discussed, including when he's behind Toilet in that same hallway. So on any of the paths here highlighted within the cycle, you're going to want to stall for as long as possible when making your way through Toilet's path, so you can have more time with Aiden later. You can use the slap sound that Toilet makes when he approaches as a metric. For these right side paths, you're going to want to do them in 5 slaps in order to stall Aiden. Thankfully, this first path is a freebie, as Aiden is currently on the other side of the office, so we can do this in any amount. Now we're going to have to send the second barrage, 1.3 to 1.5 for bus 5, and 2.3 to 2.5 for bus 4. For me, this is the easiest barrage, as the timings for the buses are exactly 1 second apart, making it pretty easy to time out. Once you send the bus 4 in the second barrage, you're going to have to rush a bit. Matt will be waiting at the left door to lunge at you, and if you're not fast enough with Code and Frogger, he'll get you in the office before you even have a chance to turn to his side. So we have to process and take out Code as fast as possible. In min mode, you can just look for the frog that has 20 HP and explode Code with it, as the highest damage frog will always be equal to Code's HP. Then, without any hesitation, flick to the left to turn, then slam your cursor on the door button for Matt. In min mode, Matt gives you 0.1 seconds of wait time, then begins lunging at you. His lunge animation lasts 9 frames, giving you a total of 0.25 seconds to close the door on him once you've turned to his side. Immediately after closing the door on Matt, you're going to have to keep rushing. Turn back and forth so you can trigger Toilet, then do the left path as fast as you can, ideally around 3 to 4 slaps. Now, prepare to send the final barrage of buses for Yeeboy. Bus 4 on 9.5 to 9.8, and Bus 3 on 9.9 to 0.1. In my opinion, this is the hardest barrage to hit timing-wise, as the intervals aren't spaced out evenly. You just kinda have to get used to the click pattern and ingrain it in your muscle memory. Once you finish this barrage, Aiden will be waiting at your left door. To conserve power, you can try and wait until you think his timer is just about to run out, then turn to the left side and shut the door on him. Personally, I don't find power to be too much of an issue, so I usually play it pretty safe with Aiden. When the door is closed, you'll hear a bonk indicating that he's left. Now, turn to the other side of the room and get Toilet's next path. At this point, Aiden will be on the right side of the office, so you're going to have to stall out this path for as long as you possibly can, preferably in 5 slaps. As you return to the center, flip twice in order to offset maximum, then wait until the next 1.5 or 6.5 second mark on your timer and prepare to flick for Matt. Once you turn back to get toilet again, you'll be ready to send the next 2 and 3 barrage to start the next cycle. In my opinion, this 2 and 3 barrage is the hardest part of the cycle. You have to time this super tight bus 2, then between sending bus 2 and 3, you have to recognize what code's value is and whether or not you should touch Frogger before pulling the cameras back up to send bus 3. Once you send bus 3, you have to explode code as fast as possible. Otherwise, Aiden will get you from the right. This is why we had to stall out those toilet paths for as long as possible, as Aiden will be crawling into the office at this point from the right side. Most times I was barely catching him. From here, we just repeat that same 35-second loop for the entire night. So yeah, all of that talking was just for one singular 35-second cycle. Thankfully, there isn't any variation between cycles aside from the paths that toilet is on, and even those loop back around eventually. When I actually began attempting min mode, it was a bit of a shock, honestly. You see, min mode by itself is still very difficult. In my opinion, it's a bit harder than 5020 NDC from UCN Deluxe. For me, the hardest part of min mode was just learning the cycle, then staying consistent throughout the entire night. In the Hopeless Pursuit video, I spent a lot of time ranking characters based on difficulty within the max modes building up to Hopeless Pursuit and Hopeless Greed. And I think it was super interesting seeing how the rankings change as the modes get harder. With only 7 characters here, I can spend a lot more time going into the intricacies of what makes certain characters difficult. So let's talk about who is the easiest and hardest in min mode. Personally, I found Maximum, Code, and Matt to be interchangeable as the easiest characters within the night. Code's mechanic could be difficult if the values of the frogs were randomized, more on that one later too, but because min mode always has the exact same value for the highest damaging frog, you just need to see which frog equals 20 and hit him with that. Matt I thought would be somewhat challenging, but turned out to be extremely easy. Even though you only have 0.25 seconds to close the door on him, the hitboxes in min mode are very forgiving. You can visually not even be close to the door button, but still be within the hitbox to close it. Maximum functionally doesn't even exist as long as you follow the cycle, but I guess you could say he makes Frogger and Yeeboy a bit harder since you have to flip an additional time after every barrage. With these 3 at the bottom, I'd say the next hardest character would be Aiden. He's not an issue because he consumes power or even waiting on him to leave since he makes a very noticeable sound cue when he does. It's more so just him forcing you to stall on the toilet paths and being right at your door when you're doing the 2-3 barrage. After Aiden, I'd say Frogger would be next. Even though he's made visually smaller and harder to hit when you're not supposed to hit him, this character perfectly capitalizes on your brain fart moments, and oftentimes I just found myself touching him out of instinct for literally no reason.
What the f is wrong? Why? Why'd you do it? Why did you do it? I don't even... Oh, what, bro?
Next up is Toilet Frog. I think no matter who you ask, this is the most agreed upon character to be in at least the top 3. You spend more time on this character than anyone else by a long shot, and having to master all of the toilet's paths on both the right and left side requires a good bit of consistency and aim. I'm going to take a bit of time here to admire the design of min mode and max mode here, because I think Toilet Frog mechanically is one of the most genius characters I've ever seen implemented in a max mode. You see, with mouse movements in any kind of game, there are generally 2 kinds of movements: flicking and tracking. Oftentimes in games like Counter-Strike or Valorant, movements are more focused on flicks and corrections, with short interactions where a victor is determined by who has the more insane reaction time and precision. Whereas games like Fortnite or modern Call of Duty games favor a more tracking movement, where you're slowly moving your mouse on a target and tracking them as they try to avoid your line of fire. Every character in One Night at Frogger's is flick-based. You have to flick the door buttons for Matt and Aiden, the camera buttons for Yeeboy, and the HP frogs for Code. But Toilet forces you to slow down and also perfect that control aspect of mouse precision. And it can be a real shock when you have to go from flick to control on such short notice, especially with how much stricter the paths get in max mode. I know I'm like nerding out here about mouse precision in a FNAF game, but this is like the coolest thing ever to me, so please let me have this one. Whether it was an intentional design choice or not, I think it turned out great. So we have our list, aside from one very special character. In all the time that I've been playing these stupid FNAF challenges, I have never seen a character carry the difficulty of a game as much as Yeeboy. is outrageous in this game. I know I've touched on before how he works, but I don't think I've really stressed enough how difficult this character really is. Yeeboy is miles ahead of everyone in difficulty, and trust me, it only gets so much worse. Let's talk about this for a second. So we have 3 barrages of buses per cycle, which comes out to 6 buses that we have to send. So that's 6 buses per cycle. Now, the night in mid mode lasts approximately 9.7 cycles, so let's just call it 10. That is 60 times that you have to not only hit a timing less than half a second, but also be able to aim and click twice to not only select the bus, but also confirm to send it. And make sure that the click where you send it is within the window. If you are even the smallest fraction of a second off, he's checking you for it. And I do literally mean the smallest fraction of time displayed by the timer. I am literally 1/1000th of a second off of this interval, and guess what he's doing?
Why do you suppose I just hurled a chair at your head, Neiman?
I don't know.
Sure you do.
The tempo?
Were you rushing or were you dragging?
I don't know.
Start counting.
5, 6,
In
7.
4, damn it! Look at me!
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Now, was I blowing or was I
Stop.
Count again.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Blowing or
Stop.
so you do know the difference. If you deliberately sabotage my band, I will you like a. Now, are you a blower or are you a
Stop.
or are you going to be on my time?
Thankfully, Yeeboy's hitboxes within the cameras aren't too bad, so the aiming part is manageable. And in min mode specifically, there's a few tenths of a second of grace for the intervals. But man, when I was first starting, it felt like I was literally only dying to this character and this character alone. The problem with Yeeboy is that he really takes advantage of incorrect muscle memory. Remember, min mode and max mode are completely scripted, down to like every last detail. So if you ingrain a certain click pattern for a barrage in your mind, it is super hard to correct that pattern later. And I seem to be having that problem a lot. Eventually though, I was making some progress in min mode, and it became more and more rapid once I managed to escape the first cycle. Since the cycles are just 35-second loops, I found myself jumping minutes at a time on personal bests. If there's one thing that I was good at with min mode, it was consistency. Having very minimal RNG and being significantly easier on my body to play compared to something like Hopeless Pursuit, I was actually able to start getting some pretty decent runs into min mode. The only super annoying parts about min mode were some of the changes as the night goes on, particularly the phone calls, as it made Frogger's sound cue a lot harder to hear.
Really weird letters and numbers. I'm not even going to try to
I couldn't f***ing hear him, bro.
I had about 5 hours of playtime in min mode when I was looking to beat it, so I just had to lock in and make one last push to finish the mode.
leave me alone. Leave me alone.
And with that, our training is officially concluded. Min mode with this strategy is already considered to be extremely difficult, but I was nowhere near ready for how significant the gap is between min mode and max mode. If I had to roughly scale min mode to something that I have done before, I think 50/20 no death coin on UCN Deluxe would be a good comparison. And jumping to max mode felt just as crazy as going from no death coin to Hopeless Pursuit, arguably even more of a gap. So what makes max mode so much harder than min mode? The best way that I can describe the immediate change between min mode and max mode is constrictive. Even without any characters activated, your movement will feel much more awkward and claustrophobic. We'll get more specifically into character changes later, but just on the office alone, all of the hitboxes for pretty much everything have been significantly decreased. In min mode, every hitbox, especially the door button hitboxes, had a lot of overhang between where the object visually ended and where the actual hitbox for it ended. But in max mode, every everything is pretty visually accurate, and you don't really realize until you make the switch how much min mode was holding your hand with these hitboxes. Again, I can't stress enough how max mode looks really easy as you're watching it, but when you actually play it, it is so much harder. And I think how small everyone's hitboxes are one of the primary reasons for this. As far as other universal changes go, the night has been extended by around a third more. The song in min mode lasted for 4 minutes and 29 seconds, whereas the max mode one lasts for 6 minutes and 9 seconds. The song in max mode is sectioned into 4 parts: the intro, Flight of the Bumblebee, Moonlight Sonata, and Mountain King. There's no differences in gameplay between any of these, but for the sake of keeping track of personal bests, I'll be using these as well as normal night times. With a 6 minute and 9 second song, the night is estimated to last around 7 minutes and 50 seconds, so nearly 8 straight minutes of this gameplay. Even though the night length has been increased from min mode, we still have the same amount of starting power at 1000%, so we're going to have to green run a bit more in max mode than we did in min mode. Even with the extended night length, I still didn't find power to be too much of an issue, but it was always good to save whenever I could. That pretty much covers the universal changes.
Now let's get into the much more exciting character changes.
And oh man, some of these guys have really been cranked up. I'll go over how everyone has been buffed first, then we can re-rank everyone based on that. Maximum 56 hasn't been changed at all, but aside from him, the other least changed character is Frogger 25. He'll now no longer shrink or grow depending on whether you should touch him or leave him alone. So you're forced to listen to his sound cue, and knowing how certain parts of the song are,
Leave me alone.
locking in on his sound cue might end up being a bit tricky. Code Hacker has been changed so that you now have to pay a lot more attention to him and process far more in order to determine which frog to use. Cheesing Code by looking for the 20 HP frog now no longer works, as Code is much more random. Instead of always having the same HP values for every time that he appears, Code will always generate a random number from 0 to 80, then add that value onto the randomly sorted frogs that have the values of 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20 HP. You can choose to deal with this new randomization in one of 2 ways. You can either look at each of the 5 frogs and see which one has the greatest HP value, or look at Code himself and find which frog is equal to his HP value. I personally choose to do it the second way, by actually looking at Code. And we'll talk more about why when we see how all of the characters interact together in max mode. Aiden Moore has only received one change. The sound cue that he normally makes upon leaving the hallway has been removed. So now you have to guess when he's gone.
Leave me alone. Touch me.
This doesn't seem like much of an issue at first, but not having this sound cue forces you to think about how much you've stalled him throughout the cycle, and how long you should wait before turning or close the door in response. Matt Warkowski has been changed so that he no longer waits 0.1 seconds before lunging at the player. Instead, the moment you turn to the hallway, he's already initiated his jump scare animation, and you only have 9 frames to hit the door button to stop him. This change on its own isn't really that bad. I'm willing to bet that during min mode, you probably closed Matt off within the first 9 frames most of the time anyway. What Matt benefits a lot more from are the universal changes to the hitboxes for the door buttons. In min mode, the door hitboxes are extended horizontally much more than vertically, specifically for Matt. And while there's still a tiny bit of grace in max mode, you have to be much more precise with your flicks. While the guys that we've gone over are definitely hard, these last 2 characters, oh man. Let's start with Toilet Frog. We all know this guy, the path guy. Dude, look at this! Every single one of Toilet's paths has been reduced in size, and the geometry dash icon on path 4 has been increased in size and speed as well. Some of these paths are so small that they're literally the size of your mouse in width. For Toilet in max mode, you need to have some of the craziest mouse and nerve control the world has ever seen. Shake or stutter even in the slightest bit and you'll end up dead. But even Toilet is a literal speck compared to the hardest character in max mode, and I'd even argue the hardest character that we have ever seen on this channel. You know him, the Yee-Boy.
Remember before how I said they were so gracious to give us an indication in min mode on when we should send the buses for Yee-Boy?
Well, no more green lights for you, buddy. You gotta use the timer. Not only do you have to use the timer, the hitboxes for Yee-Boy are insanely small, both to select the bus and to actually send it with the check mark. I can't tell you how many times I've selected the bus but didn't move my mouse far enough to click the check mark and the bus didn't send and I missed the interval. So not only does Yeeboy require you to hit timings that are within 0.2 second windows damn near blind every time, but you also have to accurately flick between the camera button, the button to select the bus, and the button to actually send the bus, all while your eyes are looking at the timer, code, and your mouse. Yeeboy requires your eyes to be in a million different places at once, and always have an internal clock within your muscles telling you exactly when you have to send each bus. Out of all 7 characters, I'd say that Yeeboy made up 80% of the deaths in serious runs. This character is absolutely insane, and yeah, he can also like cheat. We'll get more into that later. So let's see how the ranking of characters differs from min mode. We already know that maximum 56 is at the bottom, but above him, I honestly don't know. Code, Aiden, and Frogger all kind of work together to make each other difficult, since if you don't do Code fast enough, you'll die to Aiden or Matt from the hallway. But if I had to rank them, I'd probably put Frogger, then Aiden, then Code. Code I've found to be really finicky with some Frogger spawns. Like when Frogger spawns on top of this blue frog here and you have to slowly move around him in order to reach Code, or this green frog on the very right that I sometimes completely miss. And having to process both Code's HP value and all of the frogs, I think he's harder than both Frogger and Aiden. Next up is Matt. Some people seem to think that Matt is the hardest character in the game, and I could not disagree more. Compared to other characters, you spend way less time in the night dealing with him, and as long as you have somewhat decent aim, he shouldn't be that bad. Honestly, the 9-frame timing was never much of an issue for me. If I died to him, it was because I missed the door button. And after enough practice, that also kind of just stopped happening altogether. Personally, I can never understand the argument that Matt is the hardest character, because Yeeboy literally has timings that are similarly tight, way more frequent, and have way smaller hitboxes. It all comes down to Yeeboy and Toilet now. And even though you spend more time dealing with Toilet than Yeeboy, I think Yeeboy is a harder character. And even though I eventually got really consistent with Toilet, Yeeboy was always a weak spot for me throughout my entire max mode journey. With all of these changes, I can say that max mode is probably harder than Hopeless Pursuit. But is it harder than Hopeless Greed? I'd need to beat it first to truly judge that. Now knowing how hard max mode really is, a lot of you are probably wondering, why on earth would you put yourself through this again? Hopeless Pursuit was already a mind and body destroying challenge that was pretty much just straight suffering the whole way through. Would it really be worth it to put myself through that kind of mental torture again? Well, to understand why I had to do this, we have to go back to the Hopeless Pursuit video. If you haven't watched that video already, I highly suggest you do so after finishing this one. If the HP video were to have a sequel of sorts, this video would definitely be it. But it's been a while, so I'll give a brief summary of that video here. Hopeless Pursuit was far and away the hardest challenge that I had ever attempted, both mentally and physically. It's essentially a mod of Ultimate Custom Night that removes all kinds of stalling and exploits, and kicks every character up to the absolute extreme, resulting in nothing short of complete chaos. But what made the Hopeless Pursuit video special wasn't the game itself, it was the story behind it. You see, the name of my channel, The Bones 5, originated from my pet dog and forever best friend, Bones, and during the process of trying to beat Hopeless Pursuit, Bones unfortunately passed away. With how significant Bones was in my life and to the creation of the channel, I chose to dedicate the Hopeless Pursuit video to his memory, and then went on to verify an even harder version of Hopeless Pursuit, Hopeless Greed, which at the time was the hardest FNAF challenge ever completed. When I released that video, I didn't really know what to expect, but the reception was better than I could have ever imagined. At the absolute lowest point in my life, you guys, my viewers, showed out harder than I could have ever predicted. The day the video released, I saw so many stories about people with similar experiences to my own, and how emotionally touched they were by my video. And I won't lie to you guys, the first day that video dropped, I broke down crying at how much support it had received. And to all my friends in Discord that showed their support through one of my hardest times ever, I really can't thank you enough. I was honored to have turned this horrible experience in my life into a positive one for so many others. But why am I telling you this now? Well, here on YouTube, the reception of the Hopeless Pursuit video was great. You guys are truly wonderful and I can't thank you enough. But certain members of the Max Mode community reacted a bit differently. In the Hopeless Pursuit video, I never claimed to be the best player. I claimed to beat the hardest challenge, which at the time was true, but I still acknowledge that there were people better than me at FNAF as a whole. In fact, I do it in that video. And the majority of people understood this, and were very supportive of my achievement, and to those people, again, I can't thank you enough. However, there were some things that people said that definitely rubbed me the wrong way. For all of these messages, I'm gonna censor people's names, since I don't want you guys going out and harassing people, and honestly, I don't want to give these people any kind of attention anyway, good or bad. I'm only doing this because I like to show the deeper reasons why I do the things that I do in these videos. Essentially, this guy was just really angry that people were calling me a good player after beating Hopeless Greed. And normally, I wouldn't pay any mind to this. This guy's hardest is Silent Suicide Mouse, and I'll just let the numbers do the talking on that one. Everyone else on the server was congratulatory over my achievement, and the reception was still positive. But there was just one message that sent me off the deep end. Look, if you want to talk for 2 hours on end about how I'm not good at video games, sure, go ahead. I promise no one believes you. But to get so angry over my achievement that you have to insult the memory of my dog and call the video and challenge that I made in tribute to him nothing more than sympathy bait, I'm not letting that shit slide. Some people seem to think that I was a UCN one trick, and that if I played something actually hard, like max mode, that I would get obliterated. After all, on Frogger's 356 PB, the top comment is Bones could never. So, force Bones to play max mode, Bones could never. You know what, let's see about that. If you want to insult my dog's memory just because you think you're a better player than me, I'm gonna prove that we're not even close. On the list of players that were supposedly better than me, I saw Frogger25. His hardest achievement is his max mode PB of 4 minutes and 23 seconds, achieved over the course of 281 hours of playtime. So, if I could match that kind of pace with hours, then will I still not be a good player? Honestly, I don't know. I guess we'll see. During the Hopeless Pursuit video, I kept track of my progress through the days, but I was going to take a different and more efficient approach here. When I was playing Hopeless Pursuit, I would just get on every day and play non-stop, from the moment that I woke up to when I went to sleep. But I wouldn't really keep track of my hours. I figured that if I was just constantly playing all day, I could use dates as a measurement. But for max mode, I was going to be a bit more meticulous about how I tracked my playtime. For max mode, I was instead going to play in exact 1 hour increments to avoid destroying my hands like last time, and hopefully this would be a bit more efficient. So for this video, I'll structure it similar to how I did with HP, going through hour by hour. For the first 10 hours or so of gameplay, I didn't really track much because I wasn't full on playing max mode as much as I was trying to practice specific aspects of the night. I said before how I was trying to be as efficient as possible in grinding max mode, unlike how I was when playing Hopeless Pursuit. So the first thing that I did was look for variation between different parts of the night. I mentioned in the Hopeless Pursuit video how one of the things that would often get me is an unlucky bonnet spawn during a chaotic office cycle, and the only way that I could really practice that was getting to that point in the actual night. But in max mode, cycles were a lot more consistent. If we look at a diagram of the 35-second max mode cycle, there are really only a few things that can change from cycle to cycle. Before, I mentioned how Toilet has 5 paths. Path 1 is a zigzag, Path 2 is the upside down U, Path 3 is the Vinny path, 4 is the GD normal path, and 5 is the heart path. Now, when looking at this cycle diagram, there are 4 toilet paths per cycle total. Because this doesn't evenly match up with the number of paths being 5, the paths will begin to change on future cycles. Specifically, when you progress through a 35-second cycle onto the next one, each path will now be the path before it in the order. I know that sounds complicated, but basically, the biggest change from cycle to cycle that isn't just flat out RNG is Toilet. So I chose to grind the hell out of aim training with just him. The thought process was that if I could get good at one 35-second cycle, then master the only part of the night that changes on a cycle-to-cycle basis, then surely I should be okay. Maybe. Within a few hours, I was able to complete a night with just Toilet on, spamming paths over and over again on both sides. But the moment that I went into an actual night and began attempts, it felt like all of my practice had gone to waste. And this was most obvious at what I would consider the first major wall, the left heart. See, what's nice about max mode being completely scripted is that progression walls are a lot easier to identify and pin down exactly what is causing it. Because the only thing that changes between cycles are the toilet paths, and even those eventually loop back around, we can extend this cycle diagram to last the entire night, which almost makes this night feel more like a geometry dash or platformer level rather than a max mode, as you're literally doing the same thing every single time. And for me, the first left heart around 130 seemed to be a pretty clear roadblock. I've mentioned before how you're supposed to wait on right paths to stall Aiden and to rush left paths in order to keep him from camping the door. But really, Yeeboy is far more of a threat than Aiden when dealing with the left toilet path. You see, the moment you finish the second barrage, which is right here in the cycle, you're going to be rushing pretty much everything in order to make it to where you need to be for the third barrage with Yeeboy. So you want to try and explode code and flick to Matt as fast as possible. Then once you get to the left side toilet, try to do it in 4 or less slaps to prepare for the third barrage. For 3 of the 5 paths, and we'll get to this one later, I didn't really have an issue with this. However, for the last path, the heart, I found it extremely difficult to rush this path. The back half of the path was just so insanely small that I was forced to slow my mouse to a crawl and waste a ton of time trying to control my mouse and get through the path. Most of the time, I would just end up dying because I hit the boundary of the path. But even if I did make it through, I was so disoriented from locking in so hard on the back half of the path that I would just blindly send buses 4 and 3 and not even look at the timer, just hoping that they hit. So even if the heart path didn't kill me, Yeeboy ultimately would at around 1 minute and 50 seconds. It seemed like no matter how hard I practiced Toilet by himself, the left heart path in the actual game was still going to be a struggle. So I had to figure out why I was so consistent in practice runs compared to the actual game. And after a while, I began to realize what was happening. Because max mode is completely scripted, more than any other FNAF game, you're able to pay a lot more attention to your muscles, body, and movements compared to something like Hopeless Pursuit. You have to do the exact same thing at the exact same time every time. And when I was practicing Toilet by himself, I noticed that I was always able to readjust my mouse, get into a comfortable position, then do the path. Whereas in the real game, I had to rush the code and map before I even did the left path, which usually left my arm and mouse in an uncomfortable position, leading to worse mouse control and typically a death in the heart path. Once I realized this issue, I began to use the time where I was turning between getting Matt and turning left again for Toilet to pick up my mouse and readjust. That way I could aim better throughout the path. This did result in some marginal improvement. However, the left heart was still proving pretty difficult, but I was beginning to notice a slight pattern. On the runs that ended up dying to hitting the boundary of the path, it was always the upper boundary. So I began to zoom in closer to all of my deaths, and that's when I realized the toilet paths don't actually account for your entire cursor, just the topmost pixel where the tip of your mouse is. Meaning that pretty much all of your cursor could be out of bounds so long as the very tip of your mouse was still within the path. Combining this knowledge with only using my wrist rather than wrist and arm when I reached the thin section of the path, I was able to actually start getting past the heart path in real runs. And it was only a matter of time until I was able to hit the third barrage right after the path. After 13.5 hours of playtime, I have managed to get 3 runs to 151 and 1 run to 153. If I wanted to break past the first real minute barrier at 2 minutes, I was going to need to not only get past the left heart, but also hit the Yeeboy afterwards, as he would kill at 153 otherwise. But with enough playtime and consistency, it was bound to happen soon. Finally. The first minute barrier had been killed with a 215, and honestly, I was feeling pretty good. Compared to HP, this had taken me significantly less time to start making some decent progress, and even though the night was longer, I was hoping that the scripted nature of max mode would mean more consistency throughout. As I inched closer and closer to Bones Could Never, all I could do was keep at it. All things considered, it didn't take me that long to get from 1 minute to 2 minutes. But man, once I crossed that 2-minute barrier, the frequency of personal bests seemed to slow down pretty significantly. I know the last section was primarily focused on the left heart path, but that doesn't mean everything else still wasn't a problem. The chance of my runs even getting to the heart path were next to none because I would almost always miss a bus for Ye-Boy somewhere in the first minute. I know I've been stressing how hard this character is to time, but that isn't the only thing that makes him difficult. Ye-Boy's hitboxes are insanely small, and I've found that just aiming in an attempt to send the buses results in a good few deaths as well. If you want proof of how hard this character can be to aim at sometimes, look no further than the first barrage with other characters involved. Remember, in this barrage we have to send bus 2 and bus 3, but we send them on different flips, taking care of maximum between buses. To me, this part of the cycle is the biggest test of multitasking in the entire night. Compared to Hopeless Pursuit, where you're always dealing with a million things at once, Max Mode is very linear and segmented. You're dealing with one character, then another, then another. You rarely deal with multiple at a time, but here you have to. When you first flick your cursor up to send bus 2, you then have to click to send the bus, then drop the cameras. Now, for the split second when the cameras are dropped, you have to play the song for some extra time, register whether or not Frogger is touch me or leave me alone, and look at code to see what his HP value is. You'll barely get a glimpse at code before you're forced to pull up the cameras again, and I've found that I'm not fully able to focus my eyes back onto the left screen in time, and I have to use my peripheral vision to flick my mouse over to bus 3, then send it at the correct time. Then you have to drop the cams, remember which number code was, find that frog and explode code with it, then turn to the right to barely catch Aiden at the door. Because code appears later and has random HP values in max mode compared to min mode, you have to constantly focus your eyes on different parts of the screen all within split seconds. And a lot of the time, this would lead to me just barely missing the button to select the bus or the button to actually send it. I had spent around 4 hours still stuck at a PB of 215. And honestly, it didn't seem like there was going to be any breakthroughs anytime soon, and I was starting to get a little bit worried. For big videos like this where I do a really hard challenge, I always try to time them such that when I attempt them, it's always over some form of break from when I'm at college. And I had initially planned to start max mode when the summer started, but now, due to focusing on other videos first, I was halfway through the summer, and based on my current progress from 1 minute to 2 minutes, getting the whole way through to an 8-minute night before summer ended wasn't really looking that realistic. I wanted so desperately to get past that 356, that Bones could never mark, and I was slowly fighting for every second. It seemed like there wasn't going to be any flukes. I just had to hunker down and attempt over and over again. And then I began to inch forward, similarly to how I had to break my 303 wall in HP. While my personal best wasn't increasing, my consistency was. At 18 hours, I had a 215, a 2-minute flat, and 3 153s. Then 2 hours later, at 20 hours total, I had a 216, a 215, and a 2 flat times 3. And you know that when you build consistency, a new PB is on the horizon. And then, a little further, 226 at 22.5 hours. A little longer and I would have made it to Moonlight Sonata, the next section of the song, but the rest of the journey to 3 minutes wasn't going to be easy. I mentioned before how the left heart path was the first big wall in the night, around 1 minute and 30 seconds. But there was an even bigger one that I was about to reach. At 23.5 hours, I managed to finally clutch out the last part of Flight of the Bumblebee and head into Moonlight Sonata. But what awaited was what I was estimating would be the last major wall in the night. You see, the issue with the left heart path was that I wasn't able to get through it fast enough to catch the third barrage with Ye-Boy on time, but at least that path was whole the whole way through. What if we had to rush a path that by nature forces you to slow down? And that is what the left Vinny path is. At 235, we're forced to go through this path within 4 slaps. The problem is, if you aren't able to get through the first squiggly section here in time to catch Vinny or the pineapple and ride them to the other side, you're forced to wait here and waste precious time, which means you won't be able to catch Ye-Boy on time. In my opinion, this wall is worse than the left heart one, and this is for a few reasons. For one, as I had spent more and more time playing max mode, I started to realize the pattern of the paths decrementing by 1 every cycle within the game. But why does this matter? Well, this means that every 5 cycles, Toilet's paths will return back to exactly how they were in the first cycle. So, cycle 1 and cycle 6 will always be the exact same. 2 and 7, 3 and 8, and so on. So, I'm gonna split every 5 cycles into one giant loop, meaning that within every loop, the only thing that changes, Toilet's paths, will loop back and start over. This means that, in theory, once you've completed one full loop, you have done literally everything that max mode can throw at you, and the rest of the night should be easier to complete. The left Vinny path is the last left path before the start of the second loop at 2 minutes and 55 seconds. So internally, I was kinda treating this path like the final boss of this first loop. If I could start getting consistently past this path and nail the Yeeboy barrage that followed, there really wouldn't be much that could stop me. I was sure that once I reached the second loop, I could destroy the 6th cycle, since again, it's just an exact copy of the first one. Which means if I could get past this path, I could be seeing a new PB in the 310s, 320s, or maybe even the 330s. But man, I struggled and struggled against this path. At 27.5 hours, I managed to get a run that made it through the path and even on the smaller platform, but died to a stupid mistake afterwards, not leaving the door closed long enough to get rid of Aiden. It seemed that any time I made it past the Vinny path, I'd either be so nervous from anticipation of getting to the second big loop, or I would miss the barrage right after the path and end up dying from Yeeboy later, just before 3 minutes. This wall was relentless. 31 hours, 33 hours, 35 hours. I had built as much consistency as realistically possible, and I was able to start getting through the first section of the Vinny path early enough to catch Vinny's head, making it a lot easier to set up the third barrage for Yeeboy. I think it was finally time to move on to the second loop. Finally, at around 36 hours, we were in Loop 2. That was the longest wall that I had faced thus far. Not only did I make it to Loop 2, I died to a stupid mistake because of nerves, just barely missing the door button for Matt, but my Yeeboy was still completely okay. I hadn't missed any buses. This run gave me what I needed most at this time: confidence. I knew that the majority of my far deaths at this point were due to nerves, and though this was a small PB, I felt like a big one was coming soon. But if I wanted that final push, I needed to really figure out one character. Even though I was progressing, Yeeboy was still causing a load of deaths that I thought were just preventable mistimings. So I started to look a bit deeper into exactly why I was dying to this character. I was already on the second loop, so I've proved that I can handle anything max mode throws at me. Once I get completely consistent with Yeeboy, there really shouldn't be much left aside from nerve control. Up to this point, I was just following the spreadsheet for Yeeboy's intervals, and if I ever ended up dying to him, I just thought, oh, I must have missed one and moved on. But I never really spent any time trying to figure out what I missed or why I missed it. So I spent some time researching in min mode, where you can actually see Yeeboy in the camera system. Also, just as a quick side note, I found it super funny how when I was trying to hit Yeeboy without being in the cycle, I was actually missing his timings. It reminds me of how like pro Geometry Dash players die on like Rob top levels because they're just programmed to only play extremes.
Yeah, that coin's kind of impossible timing. What the f?
Anyway, I was trying to figure out what these intervals actually meant and where Yeeboy was in the building, and I was able to find this. The most common points of failure for Yeeboy are when he enters the vent when he's not supposed to, indicated by this sound, and then he reaches your office, or when you miss the bus that hits him in the vent right before he reaches you. If we look at the 6 buses that you send per cycle, we can actually chart these out to diagnose any Yeeboy death and see which bus caused it. Bear with me here because this might get a little complicated. Let's surround the bus 2 from the first barrage and the bus 4 from the second barrage with square brackets, and the bus 5 from the second barrage and the bus 3 from the third barrage with curly braces. The buses surrounded with the same type of brackets will work together to hit Yeeboy at certain points in the cycle, whereas the first bus 3 and the last bus 4 work to keep him back in between these buses. Because each bus hits a certain amount of time after it's sent, we know that if Yeeboy enters the vent when he's not supposed to, or jump scares us at these times, those were the buses that we messed up. And since cycles in max mode are completely scripted, we can just tell based on where we are in the cycle what buses we messed up. The square bracket buses are meant to hit at the exact same time, which happens while you're doing the only left toilet path in the cycle. So if you hear a bang in the vent right after the left toilet path, you missed a bus in the square brackets.
That was in. Bullshit. That was in, bro. Oh my god, bro.
The curly brace buses work together to hit Yeeboy before he gets to you in the vent. So if you get jump scared by him as you're doing the right Aiden after the first barrage, you missed one of those buses. And for these single buses, if you hear Yeeboy in the vent while you're doing the code and Frogger after the second barrage, you messed up bus 3. And if you hear him in the vent while you're turning around to do right path 2, you messed up bus 4. This was an absolute game changer for me, as now I could spot exactly where I was messing up and how I should fix it next time. I also started to look a lot deeper into why I was mistiming Yeeboy, and I finally started to realize what I was doing wrong with this character and why he was so hard for me. You see, in all my experience using timers in FNAF games, it's always been do this thing on this interval, never within this interval. And even though you're supposed to hit Yeeboy within his intervals, my brain was still in that mode of hitting him on every interval. So whenever I'd be ready to send a bus, I would be trying to predict when the first 1/10 of a second of Yeeboy's interval would pass, then I would send the bus. I probably should have realized this earlier, as literally all of my Yeeboy deaths were from sending the buses early and not late, and that probably could have saved me a good few hours. Recognizing the problem was the first step, but trying to fix it was a whole nother issue. I've said before how max mode thrives on your muscle memory, and I had already put in 35 hours at this point, so trying to tell my body to wait for just a 1/10 of a second longer on a timing that I had already spent 35 hours slamming into my brain wasn't really an easy task. So I instead tried to rework how I did Yeeboy from the ground up, with a simple phrase: react, don't predict. Before, I was trying to predict when the interval would show up, then click, but now I would force myself to physically react to the decimal on the timer changing, then click, ensuring that I was within the interval. I had tried to do this when I was first learning max mode, and I couldn't really see the 10th place on the timer, it just seemed to go way too fast. But I was having a similar experience to HP here, where after enough time playing, it almost felt like time slowed down when I needed it to, and I was able to react and see the timer. And that was it. I had pretty much figured out this character. And then the next day, I went on a complete rampage. 340, another 312, and a 310. My 3 best runs were now all in the 3-minute range. I was so focused on improving with Yeeboy that once I took a step back and realized where I was, holy shit, we're pretty close, aren't we? I didn't want to speak too soon, but max mode was starting to feel really easy, actually. At least compared to how I was feeling with Hopeless Pursuit. I was starting to have fun. I was so close to Bones Could Never, so close to proving them wrong, that now I was addicted. Before, this felt like non-stop suffering, but now I couldn't stop playing. I had spent 44 hours at this point, and I didn't want to slow down anytime soon. In all of the challenges that I had done previously, I was always fighting on the back foot, always playing defense, trying to beat a challenge before I missed another deadline for a video, and people had to wait even longer. But now I was on the offense. I had never felt like this before. I was so excited. And now it was finally time to play with some emotion and some ego behind it. After all, Bones Could Never, right? You know, when you talk shit before you win, you're wagering your entire pride and ego on the fact that your opponent won't win. So just to give a little advice to Miss Bones Could Never, when you're shit talking, stay in your league. I guess you were right. I could never take 220 hours to get a 356. But even then, why would I stop here? I'm still having so much fun. Not only had I passed Bones Could Never, I had passed Frogger's PB of 423. There was really no telling how far I could go now. During the 3-minute wall, things were looking down. My rate of progression in hours was a lot less than I had hoped. But now, I had damn near cleared the 5-minute barrier in 48 hours, and just an hour later, I crossed 5 minutes. In a third of the time that it took me to go from 2 to 3, I went from 3 to 5. And I think this was due to one simple reason. Sure, I had figured out how Yeeboy works more around this time, and you could probably attribute a bit of success to that, but what I think was most important here was the complete shift in mental state. In Hopeless Pursuit and Hopeless Greed, I had an insane amount of deaths at 5 AM, 13 in HP and 7 in HG to be more specific. And I think that was because I put so much weight on being at 5 AM that I would get so insanely nervous. But in max mode, I was just telling myself over and over again, dude, why are you nervous? This is easy shit. After all, if Bones isn't a good player, then anything he beats can't be that hard, right? So it seems like, by your own logic here, max mode is an ultra free challenge. And this worked absolute wonders. Anytime I'd be close to a new PB in max mode, sure, I wasn't completely calm, but I was way more steady than how I was during Hopeless Pursuit and Hopeless Greed. And I wasn't looking to stop anytime soon. I had already blown past the expectations that everyone had of me. But what if I could go even further? What if I was the first person in the world to actually complete max mode? And then I just started flying through personal bests. 520, 532, why not go a little harder? Let's start fluking minutes at a time. I was almost through the second toilet loop, and then I passed even that with a 632. I was thriving in this. This is what I was missing before, that competitive spirit and passion. You know what makes fighting games so enthralling to watch? To me, it's the shit talk and the competitive spirit behind it. Two players going at it when the stakes are high to completely destroy each other's egos. It's a kind of adrenaline that you can't quite produce when you're just playing alone versus the game. And max mode makes this even better through the last song, Hall of the Mountain King.
Leave me alone.
Leave me alone.
I've talked before about how I think max mode is super well designed mechanically, but they didn't sleep on the atmosphere either, because man, when that Mountain King drop hits on the second half of 6 minutes, combined with the intensity and adrenaline from the game itself, it is really an experience like no other. Hats off, because this song mechanic is honestly genius. There didn't really seem to be anything that could stop me now. The song was estimated to end around 7:50, so I was only a minute away, roughly, from beating max mode, and it wouldn't be long until that final barrier might be broken. But there was still one last obstacle standing in my way. By the will of some mystical being, I always seem to mess up a bus somewhere in the 6 to 7 range. And even if I didn't, Yeeboy would just straight up cheat and lie. Like, look at this. Alright, so I have a hand cam and a mouse input display here. I know for absolute certainty that these are the times that I click. Right here, I click to send bus 5 on 0.381, well within the interval of 0.3 to 0.5. Then we skip forward a bit and I click bus 3 on the 0.930, which is within the interval of 0.9 to 0.1. So what do you think he does?
Leave me alone.
Leave me alone.
Oh my god, bro.
People usually buy a house with their spouse, but you were going to buy one with your buddy. 8 Braden 8. You don't have the credit score or the debt to income ratio.
Oh my God! Shut the f up, you broke ass! God damn! You don't know shit about me. What the f would I buy a crib with a
Good friend.
Maybe he has a secret stand ability or something, I don't know, because at this point, I was just having stupid fail after stupid fail. Oh, what the f— The worst part about this one was that I didn't even have to do anything. I had incorrectly judged the song, but I could have very easily just stayed staring at the right door after blocking off Matt and I would have made it to the end of the song. But of course, the curse had to continue. Not a single video goes by where I don't have some tragic fail at the end. The difference here is that, at least for now, I didn't really care. I'm still having the time of my life. Now that I had a run that was basically beating the night, I think I could answer the question proposed at the beginning of the video. Is max mode really harder than Hopeless Greed? I've been waiting for this, so let's scale this one out death battle style. Generally, you can attribute a max mode's difficulty to a few unique skill sets. So let's compare HG and max mode on each of these skill sets, and see which one is harder overall. I'd say that for each max mode, precision, speed, keyboard usage, nerve control, brain power, and RNG patience would be the skill sets that we compare modes on. Precision is no doubt a max mode win. Almost every interactable object in max mode is extremely small, and characters like Matt and Yeeboy require insanely tight timings in order to deal with them. Speed is a bit tougher, but I'd have to give it to Hopeless Greed. Don't get me wrong, you still need to be really fast in max mode, but because you follow such a rigid script in max mode, once you're fast enough to handle a cycle, you don't really need to go any faster. Whereas in Hopeless Greed, there's no limit to how fast you can go, and the speed required to get through cycles to have enough time to farm coins, I think is a lot stricter than any speed that you need in max mode. Keyboard usage obviously goes to Hopeless Greed, as max mode is mouse only, which brings us to nerve control and brain power. Considering max mode is almost 2 minutes longer than Hopeless Greed, and you're constantly forced to look at the timer for things like Yeeboy and Matt, you're not really able to psych yourself into thinking you're in an early hour. Nerve control definitely goes to max mode. At 2 to 2, it comes down to brain power, and you could make an argument either way for this one, but I think Hopeless Greed has a lot more on-the-fly adaptability than max mode, since max mode is literally just the exact same cycle every time. If we were to rank RNG patience, it would also go to Hopeless Greed, because of keyboard combos and the plushie order. But because each max mode can be beaten 100% of the time regardless of RNG, I'll choose to exclude this one. So it's pretty close, but I'd have to give this to Hopeless Greed. So this begs the question, where would max mode place on the list? Well, it won't. I didn't mention this in the Hopeless Pursuit video, but I'll mention it here because a lot of people were wondering why HP and all the other UCN Deluxe modes weren't on the list after I posted my Hopeless Pursuit video. Essentially, the max mode list has a rule called developer blacklisting, which means that if a developer doesn't like their game and doesn't want it to be shown on the list, they can completely remove it. The developer of Hopeless Pursuit really didn't like their game, and apparently it was too tryhard. I don't know, I really don't understand the reasoning here. Obviously, when UCN Deluxe was taken off the list, nobody liked that. You might think, oh, well, that's not that big of a deal. If it's not on the list, then really, who cares? People can still play it. And I'd be with you until the developer literally purged every single public archive of Deluxe from existence. Right now, at least to my knowledge, there is no way to obtain the older version of UCN Deluxe on Google. You have to go and get it from someone else. Not only does this just generally upset the community and decrease motivation for people who play, because hey, who knows when the game that you spent hundreds of hours on just disappears, but it also destroys the accuracy of the list. Who cares if Ultimatum is top 1 when there's like 10 things above it that just can't be ranked for whatever reason? Thankfully, someone stepped up to make an alternate list, when a player named Max Mode Man would create the All Modes list, a much more competitively focused list that puts accuracy before anything else. I'd like to take a bit of time here to explain how the site for AML works, because one, it's probably where Max Mode is going to be placed, and I think it's super cool. If you don't care about any of this and you're just here for Max Mode, you can skip to the timestamp on screen.
Alright, I had to bring out the lawyer character. It's been a while. Actually, it's been a year since the Markiplier cheated 1020 bits. You haven't seen this guy in a while, but I'm here to disclose some super important legal information. First and foremost, if you join the AML server, the Bones 5 Inc. is not responsible for any death, dismemberment, or bodily... That is the wrong paper. Alright, here we go. The AML is not made with the intention to compete with or replace the MML. The AML is a more competitively accurate list, while the MML is more diverse and fun at the top level of top 5s and top 10s. If you're really serious and competitive, go to the AML. If you just want to have fun, go to the MML. This is not meant to be a hit piece. I'm not trying to replace the MML. I just think it's good to have a more competitive and more accurate alternative.
So when you open the site, you'll first see this bar at the top and the list. There's been a lot of difficulty in the past with ranking max modes based on both skill and RNG. So for the AML, we decided to add this slider at the top here. This controls the ratio of skill to RNG that the modes are ranked on. So if we look at the respective top 4s for 100% skill and 0% RNG, 50% skill and 50% RNG, and 0% skill and 100% RNG, you can see they have drastically different mode choices. By default, we use the 90% skill and 10% RNG split to refer to a mode as top whatever. So Hopeless Greed is currently top 6 and the 6th hardest max mode. If we click on a max mode, we can see the list of victors by date. If you'd like, you can also click on a player's name, which will pull up their profile. You can see what modes they've beaten and where they are rank-wise. Of course, I'm the only person with an actual profile right now, so I'm not actually number 1, but it's displayed that way. Now heading back to the list, along with the freedom to choose how you want to view the skill and RNG ratio, there are also filters that you can apply to only display certain parts of the list. Pre-patches, self-imposed challenges, and extra modes. Pre-patches are earlier versions. Self-imposed challenges are things like 50/20 no death coin, so not using the death coin is a self-imposed challenge, or extra modes. And an extra mode is any mode that isn't the hardest in the game that it's from. So if I only wanted to see pre-patches, I can click the pre-patches filter. And now the list has changed to only show those. You can also use the search bar to search for pretty much anything on the site, whether that be a player or a max mode. If you'd like to check the site out yourself, I'll leave links to both the AML Discord server and the site in the description of this video. Max mode will likely be placed on here a few hours after this video is out. As a fair warning though, be patient with submissions and updates for the site. The AML is a passion project and a lot of these people just do this on their free time. So don't expect anything too crazy and give people enough time. Now let's get back to the game. Now all I had to do was get one last run at the 740s and I should be done. But it seemed that for the first time since passing Bones Could Never, I was finally starting to slow down a bit. I'd been playing max mode for around 25 days at this point, and I hadn't gone a single day without not playing. I thought this might be because I was running out of steam or just getting tired, but I think it was for an entirely different reason. When I started playing max mode, it was all that I really had to worry about, but while I was playing it, things actually started going really well in my life outside of FNAF and YouTube. When I started playing max mode, the anger from seeing that message insulting Bones was pretty much all that was carrying me. But after spending some time actually experiencing life this summer, those feelings had started to diminish a bit. I didn't have that same anger that I used to, and that ultimately led to me throwing a lot of games that I think could have been winners. And it was during this time where I really started to question why I was doing this. Now, for this specific video, we obviously know why, but stepping back and thinking, even before Hopeless Pursuit, why do I go back again and again to suffer for these FNAF challenges? Well, truth be told, I do really enjoy making these videos. especially the ones that I can later focus on the emotion behind the challenge rather than just straight mechanics for the entire video. And I think you guys feel the same way, just judging based on the reception of some of the most recent videos. But I also felt that it was an internal problem. Ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to be the best at whatever I care about, and I've always felt the need to prove that to other people. Time and time again, when I've done harder and harder challenges, and I still see myself being underrated within the max mode community, I still have those thoughts in the corner of my head that this isn't enough and you're not good enough. But max mode, I felt like max mode was the end. After seeing how much weight people really put behind this mode and this game, I felt like I could finally actually rest after I fully completed what I wanted to do in this game. From the time that I've started this channel to right now, it's just been go, go, go nonstop. And it's not that I'm burnt out, far from it, I'm more motivated than ever. But I just want some time to actually experience my life. You're only young once, and I don't want to spend my youth just playing FNAF. Beating max mode wasn't an escape from other people. It was an escape from the internal chains that I put on myself that say I have to be one of the best, and that people have to recognize that I'm one of the best. Finishing max mode is my freedom. But if I want to be free, then I have to prove them wrong. So I went back and dug deep. I tried to harness that original anger that I had, and the adrenaline and excitement that had carried me from 440 all the way up until 741. I knew that I had it in me. After 7 7-minute runs, I knew that I could do it. After all, Bones could never, right?
I only got 3 words to say. Bones could never.
So that was it. Max mode is done. But after it was done, I didn't just stop. I beat it again and again and again. But why? Why keep playing? You see, this entire time, I've been playing on the hardest public build of max mode, one that you have to pay for, but still the hardest build that I can access. However, the private build that only Frogger has is slightly harder. You see, his build has small buffs starting at Moonlight Sonata that are slowly added as the night goes on. We haven't really seen too many of them yet, just a few visual distractions and a smaller play button for the song. So the game is still mostly identical to mine at his personal best of 423. Even another player with experience on max mode, Astramic, stated that a 423 on Frogger's build scales to around 5 minutes on my build. But I knew that eventually, when he beats it, people are gonna say, well Bones, you didn't do the hardest version of max mode, the version that Frogger did is harder, and then I'm back in the chains and have to go through all this shit over again. But I'm not taking that, not this time. You know how this goes, we're pulling a Hopeless Greed. After all, in my opinion, max mode is easier than Hopeless Greed, and I always like to progress up video after video, so I know what I had to do. I gotta find some way to make max mode not only harder than Hopeless Greed, but potentially the hardest FNAF challenge ever completed. I need to do something harder in this game that's harder than Frogger's version. So guys, it's time that we beat max mode twice in a row. If I could beat max mode twice in a row, here and now, it wouldn't matter what happens in the future. It wouldn't matter what people say. If I beat max mode twice in a row, I would be free. Free to experience my life, and free to make whatever videos that I enjoy making on this channel. So it was time to lock in again because the grind isn't over yet. The biggest struggle with beating max mode twice in a row was the crazy nerves after the first win. Even though I had beaten max mode a few times now, it's really hard to not crack at least a little bit under the pressure from the last part of Hall of the Mountain King. And when you do win, you're now starting back up in the second run with those leftover nerves. And oftentimes, this would just lead to me throwing to something stupid like Matt or Code. And whenever I was on run 2, Yeeboy's magical stand powers seemed to increase tenfold.
Five minutes later.
This one, dude, this one I gotta see. I'm dead. There's no way I missed anything there. I'm so convinced I didn't miss anything. That's so in, bro. That's so in. What the f— when your son is tweaking for no reason, bro, why did he kill me? That was literally— They actually just lie. He actually just cheats, bro. He pisses me off so much. I don't know if I haven't made this clear enough already. He pisses me off so much, bro. Oh my god.
I'll just go ahead and block this. Fuck off my fucking Instagram, you worthless.
We all know you're moving with fire fuel in the new crib.
Oh my god, shut your pussy ass up. Shut your bitch ass up. And everything. I'd be crying over that. Couldn't even. I really paid $300 for that. Thank you for the $300. I would never move with a in a house, you broke ass. Shut the fuck up. Stop trying to figure out where I'm gonna move secretly and what I'm doing next.
Eventually, I was able to get a decent run that made it past the first 10 seconds. To make things a little easier, let's just say that one run of max mode is 8 minutes long. I know that's not entirely accurate, but to make the graphs more readable, it's a lot easier. So now we can just say run 2 1 minute is 9 minutes, and so on. I was able to get a run that made it to 9:17, which I think is pretty solid. But something else was beginning to grab my attention. I was noticing that every time I was getting a win in max mode, I was lowering the world record speedrun time slowly. My first win was a 7:49, my second win a 7:42, third a 7:41, and I was starting to consider how far I could really push this speedrun. Not only could I go for 2 in a row, but I could also try and set a decent world record speedrun time, maybe a sub 7:40 or maybe even a sub 7:35. If I could manage to shave off a good few seconds, it could end up helping in the long run. You see, with the current song pace that I was having, the night in max mode was ending right around the 3rd cycle of loop 3, which means this is a left heart cycle. By some miracle, in all of my wins, I never died to the last left heart. But what if I could just eliminate it entirely? When you take a look at all of the characters in max mode, only Yeeboy, Matt, and Aiden can kill you if you're just stalling and doing absolutely nothing. So if we could hold these characters off long enough to just play the song out before we do the last left heart path, we might be able to skip the left heart entirely. As long as we've hit every bus for Yeeboy up to this point, and because we're looking at Aiden in the hallway, that would mean that Matt would be the next character to kill at around 7:33. So in order to pull off this skip, we need to get a sub 7:35. And with that, my max mode speedrunning side quest began. I needed to identify within the night where I could squeeze out any more song time out of the cycle, and there were only really a few moments that I could improve on. We know that the only time that we lose song pace is when we have to enter the cameras to send buses. So I began to try and flick my cursor up to replay the song after dropping the cameras a lot faster. This did make Frogger a bit harder, as I would usually wait for his sound cue before replaying the song, but this had potential to save a lot of song pace overall. You pull up the cameras a ton, so even saving split seconds on every flip could result in those 5 or more seconds of song pace that I needed at the end of the night. I also began to wait a bit longer before entering the cameras for Yeeboy, specifically on the second barrage. In this barrage, you can use the visual cue of the image changing on the Frog TV as a tell of when to enter the cameras. In later parts of the night when I was more nervous, I'd usually get scared and flip up before the image changed, which wasn't lethal or anything, but it did lose me a bit of song time every time I did it. So I tried to wait every time for the image to change. There was one more way to improve my song pace, using a different strategy called -2. This strategy, which was invented by Nico Frost, the same inventor of -7 in FNAF 2 actually, only involves sending one bus on barrages 1 and 3, which would result in less time in the cameras overall and actually make a lot of characters easier. The only problem is that in order to remove the first bus 2 and the last bus 4, you have to send all of the other buses on the later half of their intervals, cutting all of Yeeboy's intervals in half. So if I had to choose between making every other character harder and Yeeboy more aim-based, or a 0.1 second interval, I'm choosing every other character because man, I hate Yeeboy's timing so much. But with an increase in speed and a bit more patience on the second barrage, I attempted to lower the record as far as I possibly could. With small improvements on each run, it wasn't long before I was going to be able to implement the heart skip. I just had to be mechanically perfect on every flip, and I'd have that sub 733.
Sub left heart is real. There's no way.
You bitch.
With the record lowered to a 724, the left heart path, right path 1, and right mat at the end of the night were now completely skipped, and with 7 seconds to spare. But that wasn't the only thing that I had improved upon when going for speedruns. Every time I got another run to a win, I took another crack at winning twice in a row. Nerves were bad, but eventually I was able to improve upon my 907 and fluke the next 2 minutes, dying to missing the bus 5 button with a 320 run 2 or 1120. I was now sitting at 79 hours, and I could tell that there really wasn't that much to go. But man, that second run was just a mental block that I really couldn't break. I honestly thought this would be a lot easier than it was looking so far. I mean, sure, I was progressing a lot faster than I had through the first run, but when I went to do Hopeless Pursuit 3 times in a row after making that video, it had only taken me 30 minutes of attempts to do so. And I think the reason why max mode is so much harder to beat consistently comes down to exactly why you end up dying in both kinds of max modes. There's no denying that in Hopeless Pursuit, the amount of inputs per second far exceeds max mode. But in Hopeless Pursuit, you have a safety net of sorts. Let's say I'm playing HP. My finger slips and I close the left door when no one is there. Well, that's okay, I'll just reopen it and that's that. Sure, it's very easy to make a mistake in HP, but a mistake isn't always lethal. In max mode, you might be doing a lot less per second, but you're required to be absolutely perfect. Aside from maybe missing the play button on the song, any single mistake that you make is lethal, which I think makes it a lot harder to stay consistent. Especially with one, the fatigue that you have when you have to keep up this caliber of gameplay for 16 minutes straight, but also the nerve control. With 16 minutes of gameplay, that comes out to a staggering 52 Matt Wachowski jumps, 104 toilet paths, and 156 buses sent that you have to do perfectly. The nerves that I had experienced when I was first beating max mode were amplified tenfold when I had a decent run 2 going, since I knew that beating run 2 would actually be the end. I passed 10 wins, then 20 wins, only increasing my PB up to a 1220. Also, as a little side note here, someone in the max mode list didn't believe me when I said that I had beaten HP 20 times over in that video, so for the proof this time on the second channel, I'll make sure to attach every single max mode win that I've ever gotten just for you. Anyway, even though the run 2 nerves were pretty bad, the run 1 nerves had pretty much completely subsided. By win 20, even at 7 minutes, I barely felt any difference. The issue was more so fatigue from playing so long than nerves. It was only a matter of time before my nerve control got even crazier, and I was able to keep cool in the second run. And then I got on this run. Similar to how I had failed at 741, I'd failed only a minute and 30 seconds away from beating max mode twice in a row. But this was to be expected, and I couldn't really be that mad about jumping another minute with this personal best. The question was now, can I finish out the rest of the night in one go, or will I have another hopeless greed moment? I had a horrible fail when I was trying to beat max mode for the first time, but this time was a bit different. I was planning to go on vacation right around this time, and the days were winding down until I had to leave. Leaving for an extended period of time meant that I would probably lose a good bit of consistency, and I would have to rebuild what I had lost. I've always been really bad with deadlines on challenges. In fact, in the Hopeless Pursuit video, I ended up failing both of the personal deadlines that I had set for both Pursuit and Greed. But I felt that if there was any time that I was going to break this curse, it was going to be now. I wanted so desperately to escape the mental chains that I had put on myself, and finally go back to how making videos felt at the start of my YouTube career. I was going to be free. As I passed Bones Could Never and Frogger's PB again, I was expecting to be nervous. I was expecting to be scared. But under all the pressure, in the mix of adrenaline and ego and all of it, I felt that drive to prove them wrong, and that drive to get back for what they said about my boy. And then I felt it. Under all the pressure and nerves, this insane high. I hadn't felt this alive in years, and this feeling was why I do these challenges. This feeling was what it was all for. The fact that a video game can make me feel like this is a life or death situation, like everything in my entire life is at stake. Under all the pressure, with my track record of failing so close to the end and the precision of max mode, it was unlikely to fluke a minute and a half to finish the night. Maybe my mind had thoughts of losing, but my body, the muscle memory that I had built up over 94 hours, I knew that my body wouldn't make a mistake. This was the end, and remember, Bones could never. This was it. All I had was one turn. A turn that I had failed before, and 9 frames. I've never shaken like this. I've never felt such an internal clash of adrenaline, emotion, ego, nerves, all of it. My brain wasn't even comprehending the pressure of the situation. If I lost here, I wouldn't have any more days to give. It was this, or it was nothing. Oh my god. Yes! Yes! Ah.
Leave me alone. Touch me.
That's it. No more. That's it. That's it. Holy f, it's over. Oh my god, 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 it's over. I'm free. I'm free. I'm free. I'm free. Yes! I was gonna talk shit, but I can't even comprehend how happy I am. I'm not even gonna talk shit.
Alright, the Bones 5.
What's up?
How are we having lots of fun?
Oh yeah. First max mode victor to ever visit Mount Rushmore.
Isn't that crazy?
That's true, but...
After I beat max mode twice in a row, I went on my vacation trip, and I finally had some time away from FNAF and YouTube and all of it. I'm gonna say it again, don't harass anyone mentioned in this video. I know I censored names, and I know some of you guys will probably go looking, but really it's not worth it. I know I spent a good majority of this video talking about how much I used the Bones Could Never message, and the messages about me not being a good player, and about Bones as motivation. But in the end, I don't hate the people in those messages. I understand they were acting out of anger, and I've said some pretty toxic things in the past out of anger too. It's just the nature of a competitive space. Don't hate people, but at the same time, don't lose motivation for the things that you care about. No matter what that motivation is, no matter who you are or where you came from, use people's doubts as fuel for your own drive. Because with enough willpower, you can do it. This video might upset some people, so to those people, maybe your motivation is being better than me, and if that's your motivation, if that's what drives you to be the best you can be, then go for it. For me personally, don't worry, I'll still be doing hard challenges on this channel, but the ones that I want to do. We still have the 5 pillars that I teased in the Hopeless Pursuit video, and though this is probably harder than all of those except for maybe Chuck E. Cheese Rebooted, I think you guys will still enjoy those videos. With that said, I know this was a lot, but thank you all so much for watching this video. Peace.